Welcome to the Celtics pod. I'm Erik Vandenbossche. All right, Celtics starting to play a little bit better. Obviously, fans were not feeling so well after Gordon Hayward suffered that gruesome injury. And I have to admit, every time I see the Celtics play, I always think to myself, or I always wonder, what would it look like if Gordon Hayward were here? What would it look like if he was playing? And I know it's great, like some of the silver linings and stuff, like getting young players more involved and stuff like that, but I still can't help but think about what it would look like with Gordon Hayward. But they have strung together a 4-game winning streak without him. They beat Miami on Saturday night in what was a great game, a fun game to watch. Kyrie Irving, a fantastic game, especially late in the game. Help him pull away there at the end. He had a game-high 24 points. So, yeah, he helped them pull away at the end there with a floater with 2 minutes left, reverse lay-in with 1:40 left, and that reverse lay-in was pretty impressive. That was pretty sweet. A 3 with a minute left to go in the game, go up 7, and then ices the game with a couple of free throws. So, Kyrie has been awfully fun to watch. He went in that game versus Miami, 10 of 23 from the field, 2 of 8 from three-point range. So it's not exactly like he was super efficient or anything like that. And his shooting this year hasn't been very efficient, but he's making huge shots, and he's just dazzling at the rim and dazzling with his ball handling as well. So he's certainly fun to watch. Played pretty well opening night versus Cleveland. Didn't shoot well over the next 3 games, and people started asking what's up with Kyrie Irving, what's up with the shooting. But he was pretty impressive versus Milwaukee, 24 points, 10 of 18 from the field, 7 assists. All sorts of great plays in that game. There's that one play where he was one-on-one with Malcolm Brogdon, and then Chris Middleton came over to double team, and then Kyrie just spins away from the defenders, does a floater as the shot clock expires, and it kind of bounces around a little bit and then eventually falls in. And then there was that drive past Giannis Antetokounmpo. Drove baseline, does that up and under reverse lay-in that he's so good at, and that was another great highlight from him. But he's one of those players, you know, you go to work and you talk to the coworkers and stuff like that. They're always like, did you see that great play from Kyrie Irving? And it's like, well, which one? And then Scal at the end of that Miami game says, we're witnessing something pretty special. And I think we certainly are. Jayson Tatum, witnessing something pretty special with Jayson Tatum as well versus Miami, 20 points, 6 of 9 from the field. It looks like Jayson Tatum has really adjusted pretty well to the pro game. Seems to have a great feel for the game. Great in transition. He's knocking down threes. 43% from three-point range for him. Played really well versus the Knicks, too. First time in Celtics history in that Knicks game that the Celtics have ever had a duo, each under 22 years old, score 22 or 20-plus points apiece in the same game. So that was a pretty special night for those two young players. Tatum scored 22 points in that game, pretty efficient again, 9 of 15 shooting. And Brad Stevens spoke to him. He said over those first 3 games, he said that Tatum was a little hesitant shooting at times, not getting shots up quick enough, passing up open looks, deferring to your stars like Al Horford and Kyrie Irving. But it seems like he's been a little more assertive starting with that Knicks game. So he's looked pretty impressive. A lot of great plays in that Knicks game. He had that put-back dunk off that Aron Baynes missed, and he also blocked Courtney Lee. And then on the other end, got an alley-oop from Terry Rozier. So he's pretty exciting. He makes the game awfully fun to watch. And I think, he should be in that Rookie of the Year discussion because all the talk was he wouldn't get as much playing time as some of the other young guys, not as much as Markelle Fultz, and he is getting more playing time than Markelle Fultz. Jayson Tatum is playing 33 minutes a game. That's his average over the first couple of games of the season. And obviously the 33 minutes a game has a little bit to do with Marcus Morris being out, Gordon Hayward likely suffering a season-ending injury. So he's getting more playing time than people had expected and getting some playing time with the starters. But he should be right there in that Rookie of the Year discussion. Jaylen Brown, another young player for the Celtics. He had a really great game, as I said, versus the Knicks. 23 points, 9 of 16 shooting, just attacking the basket constantly. Spin moves along the baseline, all those fun things to watch as a Celtics fan, playing some great defense as well in that Knicks game. Block Canner in the first quarter. He had a steal that led to that reverse monster jam, which was just absolutely sick. When Jaylen Brown has the ball on a fast break and it's just a clear lane between him and the basket, that's when you're like on the edge of your seat, like, oh man, what are we going to see? What is he going to do? And he didn't disappoint with that reverse dunk. That was just that was fun to watch. That was a monster jam. So that was set up by a steal by Jaylen Brown. Had some pretty good defensive plays versus Miami as well. Dion Waiters stole the ball, and then Dion Waiters is going the other way. And the whole time, Jayson Tatum is stuck to him like glue, like all the way up the court. And then, Jaylen Brown challenged the shot. Dion Waiters misses. So he's made a lot of great defensive plays, and that's something the Celtics need from him. That's something Brad Stevens talked about after losing Avery Bradley was, we need to take advantage of his athleticism and his length. And his athleticism, his length would provide versatility because he could match up against, some ones, some twos, switch on to fours and stuff like that. So he seems to be getting it on the defensive end. Does kind of seem like, though, his shooting needs to become more consistent. Since that Knicks game, he's only 3 of 17 shooting, 2 of 8 from 3. So he has been struggling with his jump shot over the last couple of games. But, like I said, there's still he's still got a lot going for him. He's great in transition, great size, great athleticism, playing great defense and stuff like that. So Jaylen Brown has showed, despite his shooting struggles recently, he's shown an awful lot over the first couple games of the season. You know who showed a lot, especially in the first half of that Miami game, was Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart was just a stud in the first half of that game. He finished with 16 points, 6 of 12 shooting, but, he was scoring off pick and roll, attacking the basket, putting up a floater, I think on one of his buckets, pulling up at the free throw line for a jumper on another one, knocked down a couple of deep threes in the first half versus Miami, showing some really sick handles, acting as a primary ball handler, setting up the offense, making great passes. He had the alley-oop to Daniel Tice versus Miami. So Marcus can get in a groove, and he plays with a lot of swagger and a lot of confidence out there. I really like him initiating the offense, being one of those primary ball handlers. And it's offensively, he can get so hot sometimes. And you watch him play like the way he played versus Miami, and then you wonder, like, how did this guy only average 28% from three-point range last year? Because there are certain nights where he plays like an all-star and he looks like an all-star. Like, if he played more consistently, like the way he played versus Miami, he would be an all-star player. He didn't play so well in that Milwaukee game. He took a pretty bad three, like a foot behind the three-point line, defended by the Freak. 17 seconds left in the shot clock, and he launches up this contested three. So then Reggie Miller's on the call, and he's like, "Bad shot, Marcus." And he goes, You're a poor three-point shooter for your career. What makes you think you can make that shot?" And that's a good question. He also posted up Chris Middleton twice. And Chris Middleton's got 4 inches on Marcus Smart. So when he posts him up the first time, it's a difficult shot, and it doesn't go in. So, what does he do after that? He posts up Chris Middleton again, and he gets another difficult shot, and that doesn't go in either. So it's like he's so confident sometimes, and he plays so well. Plays well where he's handling the ball, distributing the ball, running pick and roll really well, knocking down shots. He's getting a lot of catch and shoot opportunities, and he looks great. And then there are other times where he's launching up threes contested, like with 17 seconds left in the shot clock, a foot behind the three-point line. And, like those post-ups versus Chris Middleton, like Al Horford, when Al Horford is in the low post and he's being defended by a bigger player, Al Horford has a tendency of passing out of those situations because he knows it's a more difficult shot. Like when he was defended by Greg Monroe versus Milwaukee, he would get matched up versus Monroe, and then he would pass to a teammate. But Al Horford is such a savvy veteran, such a smart player, seems to always make the right plays, seems to always set up great scoring opportunities for his teammates. Versus Miami, 12 points, 9 boards. Monster game in Milwaukee, because in that Milwaukee game, both Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum struggled. They both put up a little more offensively in the second half. They did not carry the team like they did versus the Knicks, but Al Horford and Kyrie Irving did in that Milwaukee game. Horford, 27 points, 11 of 14 shooting, 4 of 5 from 3, and Al Horford's defense has just been absolutely awesome. Brad Stevens said he doesn't get the credit he's due as a defender. Shutting down Kristaps Porzingis, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. So on the defensive end, Al's been pretty good, and he's scoring from inside, scoring from outside. Of course, like I said, he's got that great passing. He seems to be developing a really nice two-way game with Kyrie Irving. Those two seem to be playing off one another, and, that looks pretty sweet. And I wonder what it would look like with Gordon Hayward to have Al and Hayward and Kyrie Irving out there. I mean, it looked pretty good through 4 preseason games and 6 minutes of regular season action when the three of them were out there together, but we'll have to save that. We'll have to wait until next year. It's frustrating though. Like I'm sorry, I can't help but, bring up Gordon Hayward because Celtics fans just clamoring for fireworks. We want fireworks, Danny. Ever since Wick Grossbeck suggested there would be fireworks years ago, people have been asking for fireworks and expressing their disappointment when they don't get a great fireworks display. And then Danny Ainge over, so many years touted that cap flexibility and tradable assets and all these young players and stuff like that and this bright future, but, saying he has the assets to bring in a great player and stuff like that. And it's like, well, come on, Danny, let's do it. And he makes all these big splashes in the offseason last year, and we finally get fireworks. We get Kyrie Irving. We sign Gordon Hayward, and then Gordon Hayward, 6 minutes into the season, suffers a gruesome injury. And it's like, we've been waiting for these moves. The moves came. We're excited. We're anticipating a great season. So excited for opening night. And then 6 minutes into it, it's just like, it was a complete heartbreaker. And then obviously for Gordon Hayward, you feel completely bad for the guy because it was a gross looking injury. And he's excited to join the team and play with Brad Stevens, play with Al Horford, all the young guys, play with Kyrie Irving, wants to be out there to help his team. He can't be on the floor. Has to go through that grueling rehab process, and you feel for the guy because it's a crappy situation, for him. As a basketball fan, I'm like, oh no, it hurts the team. But if you think about it, there's a human being here who really suffered a gruesome injury, and now he's got all this stuff that he's going through. So it's like, it's an unfortunate situation for him. But Kyrie Irving, Al Horford. Back to Al Horford. A long tangent on Gordon Hayward. So it's just, back to Gordon Hayward. When Gordon Hayward suffered that injury, I was so disappointed. And I was so disappointed when I went to bed that night. I had a dream that I was on a bus, like a city bus, talking to a guy about Gordon Hayward's injury. And then when I woke up in the morning, it was the first thing that I thought about. And to me, it's like sometimes things happen in sports where it's like there's something so upsetting in sports where like you suffer, for a couple of days of sports related depression. And that did that for me, that Gordon Hayward injury. And I remember it's happened to me before, 2003 in the ALCS versus the Yankees. Grady Little leaves Pedro Martinez in too long, and the Red Sox blow the game, and you're just like, Brady, why did you leave Pedro in? We were so close to going to a World Series, and that, of course, was, the curse was still in effect, I guess, at that point. So Red Sox fans were still waiting for that first championship, or the Patriots losing to the Giants in their undefeated season. Like, those were heartbreaking losses, and this one I was completely bummed out for days after that. And sometimes when something happens like that with me, I will just avoid sports completely. Like I will not listen to sports talk radio. I will not watch Sports Center. I will avoid all things sports related for a couple of days. And the next day, I was in no mood to talk about Gordon Hayward the next day. But, obviously, the future's still very bright for that basketball team. They have so many good young players, and they have some good veterans on the team as well who are locked up for a couple of years. Kyrie Irving's got 2 years, only 25 years old. So still a bright future. But it's just like that's kind of been the way it's been with the Celtics for a couple of years, a bright future. Like they've had a good team over like the last 3 years. And they've been able to get to the playoffs and they've been able to win some games. But that whole time you're thinking they're not going to win a title, but we have a bright future. We'll be a contender very soon. And then you finally get to that point where you may be at that point and then you lose a great player. So back to Al Horford. And back to Al Horford, I guess, just being, a smart player, all the things he does. There was a baseball pass from Kyrie Irving versus Miami. He's under the basket, gives a couple of pump fakes. 2 defenders bite. They go flying right by him, goes up and one. So, he does a lot of those things where it's like it doesn't necessarily show up on the stat sheet. And people are like, oh, Al Horford. I mean, he's not scoring 20 points per game. Not like anyone expected him to do that when he came in. But, he's not making all these flashy plays or racking up the points or whatever, but he's doing all those other things, making smart plays, making the right play, setting up his teammates, just being a great passer, being a great defender and all those things. So sometimes he just doesn't get the credit that he is due. He had a couple of tough games. He wasn't involved offensively versus Cleveland. He had a rough shooting night versus Philly, but overall he's shooting 45% from three-point range and he is scoring 16 points per game. So Al Horford can certainly stretch the floor, and he's becoming more comfortable playing center. He said that back in Atlanta, he didn't want to play center, but he says he's becoming more comfortable playing that position because the league has become more perimeter oriented. So, and he's certainly somebody who fits that mold as a big guy who can spread the floor and can shoot the three and can defend out on the perimeter. So he's been playing the 4 with Aron Baynes at the 5. He may go back to the 5 once Marcus Morris comes back. That was always expected to be the case. Marcus Morris, everyone predicted that he would start at the 4 with Al at the 5. Marcus Morris actually hopes to make his regular season debut Monday versus the Spurs. He said that earlier in the week. Brad Stevens, on the other hand, speaking to Asherrod Blakely before that Miami game, Stevens said, well, Monday might be a little too optimistic, and he said that Marcus Morris needs to get a hard practice in before he gets out there on the floor. So we still might have to wait a couple of days. Of course, he had the knee soreness. He joined the team late because of the assault trial. Comes in, reports that he's not in great shape and he needs to improve conditioning. And the Celtics are like, well, we'll just ease him back. He'll miss the first couple of games. There's a bigger picture. It's a long season. All of those things. So it will be nice to have him come back and have him contribute as a guy who can, be versatile, play multiple positions, stretch the floor, defend on the perimeter, all of those things. Nice to have another veteran in there with the Celtics relying so heavily on some of these young guys. Al Horford also talking about Aron Baynes with Baynes at the 5, Horford at the 4. He says he loves having Aron Baynes on the team and loves playing with Aron Baynes. He says it gives him the freedom to roam around on defense. Horford called Baynes an underrated defender and a very smart player. And he says the two of them are developing more chemistry on offense, and that's something that seems to be building, I guess at a reasonable pace or whatever. I know people said, and Brad Stevens said this early on, like maybe even in preseason, that the chemistry was building more rapidly than they expected, which is nice. And then, you're building chemistry, you're learning to play with one another. And then all of a sudden, one of your major pieces, one of your starters suffers a major injury. So you have to adjust to that. And other guys have to kind of step up and, play some additional minutes and stuff like that. But Aron Baynes, I love this guy. Such a good acquisition. 7 points, 5 boards on the season average, playing about 20 minutes per game. Over the first couple of games, his numbers were more limited by fouls, but he's averaging about 20 minutes per game, knocking down those mid-range shots with good consistency, and then challenging shots vertically, which he does so well. And Brad Stevens saying when he challenges shots vertically, the rule of verticality, he's extremely difficult to score on. And I think we have seen that, and he provides that physical presence that's been missing with this team over the last couple of years, because this guy is tough. He's big, he's strong. Tom Heinzen made a comment during the preseason, and he said, I was looking at this guy Aron Baynes in the shower, which was weird. He said something about looking at Aron Baynes in the shower and how, he saw Aron Baynes and he's like, he's this huge guy and stuff like that. And it's like, well, Tommy, first of all, why are you looking at him in the shower? And second of all, like, you don't need to see him in the shower to realize that he's a huge guy. Can't you just look at him on the court and say, well, that guy's big and strong? But apparently Tommy is like, he looks really big on the court, but if I could just see him in the shower, that was weird. But we love Tommy, and he recently just celebrated his 61st anniversary with the Boston Celtics. Been around 61 years, so that's like almost as long as my father has been alive. So that's a long time, obviously, and part of the Celtics family bleeds green. You can't picture the Celtics without Tommy Heinsohn, so we love him. Aron Baynes, again, the big physical presence that they haven't had, certainly obviously stronger and bigger and more physical than guys like Kelly Olynyk, Amir Johnson, Tyler Zeller. Reggie Miller talking about Aron Baynes on one of the national broadcasts said that Daniel Tice is a better offensive player than Aron Baynes. And I was like, Daniel Tice is a better offensive player than Aron Baynes? Aron Baynes knocks down all of those mid-range jump shots with such consistency. You're like, how can Daniel Tice be a better player offensively than Aron Baynes? But, you watch him versus Miami, and Aron Baynes is obviously more athletic. Or, excuse me, Daniel Tice is obviously more athletic than Aron Baynes. And Daniel Tice can do some things offensively that Baynes cannot do. And Daniel Tice, has more range on his jump shot than Aron Baynes does. So, I mean, maybe some more versatility with Daniel Tice and more athleticism and all those things. So I don't know if he's a better player than Aron Baynes offensively right now, but Daniel Tice certainly seems to have a lot of potential, and he's still adjusting to the NBA game, which is much different than playing in Europe. It's his first time in the NBA, but he's got a lot of experience. He played in Europe for a long time professionally, and he's 25 years old. He's not coming into the league as a 19-year-old. So Aron Baynes talking about how big and tough he is and how hard it is to knock this guy to the ground. Oh, my God, Greek Freak almost killed Aron Baynes. That collision at the Mecca, Giannis Antetokounmpo is driving to the basket, and then Aron Baynes goes up vertically. Those two collide, and then bam, Aron Baynes just hits the deck like a sack of potatoes, and everyone is just freaking out. Like this guy, like Antetokounmpo just destroyed this guy who is so big, strong, physical, and I guess that means, the Freak is like really strong too and stuff like that. Although in Aron Baynes' defense, he was standing still, and then he goes up vertically, and the Freak had like a full head of steam charging at the basket. So one guy is stationary, and the other guy's coming on strong, charging the basket. So maybe that had something to do with it. And I also want to say that the Freak got the foul on that play. And what happened to the rule of verticality on that one? Aron Baynes went straight up. So I don't know. Maybe people are just like so shocked. They're like, I don't know what to do, blow a whistle. It was a monster collision. You would think there would be a foul there, but he went straight up. Aron Baynes did. So I don't know. Whatever. I'm not a ref, and that stuff is, hard to figure out anyway, because you never know what the heck's a foul. But I don't know. Maybe a foul. Maybe it wasn't a foul. But he went up vertically, and then he just got demolished by Antetokounmpo, who is an absolute stud. Oh my God, this guy looks like a transcendent player. Looks like he could be in that elite category at some point. Obviously, he's still going to work on his jump shooting and become a more consistent, more confident jump shooter. But he's got the size and he's got the length and he's got the athleticism. Covering such a long stretch of the court in 3 dribbles, as Reggie Miller pointed out. And this guy, when Aron Baynes, when Antetokounmpo is driving to the basket and then he does that spin move on you, it's like impossible to defend. So if this guy can get his jump shot down more consistently, he's going to be an elite player. I think he looks like a transcendent player to me. Celtics improved defense and rebounding. And I think it all starts with the improved rebounding. Defensive rebounding percentage is 3rd in the NBA right now. And, a lot of people said this, that the Celtics would be an improved rebounding team compared to last season. And that basically because of their size, length, athleticism, versatility. Their size and their length, their starters 2 through 5, their starters are 6'7" or taller, and they have a lot of athleticism there. So that helps with the rebounding, and it would be nice to have a guy who can give you 12 rebounds a night. But I mean, rebounding is it's a team effort. And as a group, they appear to be a better rebounding team. And, keep in mind that Marcus Morris hasn't played yet. And not that he's known as a great rebounder, but, he does have some good size too, 6'9". So if he goes in as the 4, then you have another guy who is 6'7" or taller playing in that starting lineup. Terry Rozier, also a great defender, obviously not 6'7", but he is such an awesome rebounder as a guard. Terry Rozier is that's one of the things he does exceptionally well for a guard, is rebound the basketball. All right, Gordon Hayward. Back to Gordon Hayward. I'm not going to talk about being disappointed or anything like that. It is what it is, and now Gordon Hayward is focusing on getting back, joining the team. And they put out a recovery timeline not too long ago. They said he would be back in 4 to 6 months. So, I mean, it kind of sounds like, he seems unlikely to return at this point. I mean, if he's back in time for the start of the playoffs, I mean, they're not going to rush him into a situation, especially if they don't think they're going to be able to win a title, if maybe they can't beat Golden State or whatever. I don't see them rushing him back in, because he's such an important player and so, important to their success for, years to come. And he's going to be on the team, for several years. So we don't want to rush him back into it. There's always a bigger picture. And you don't want to rush him into getting back in the playoffs, and he plays his first games in months, and then all of a sudden he's thrown right into the fire playoff time when you're playing elite teams and elite players, and everything's more physical, and there are fewer whistles, and it's up-tempo. You don't want to rush him back into that situation. I mean, having your first game, since October being a playoff game versus LeBron James in Cleveland, or Milwaukee and Antetokounmpo, John Wall, Washington. Danny Ainge said that he is likely done for the season. Gordon Hayward's agent said he is likely done for the season, and they would certainly know. They're not doctors, but they have all the latest information. Dislocated ankle, fractured tibia, 4 to 6 months of recovery time. Phase 1, the healing process, 6 to 8 weeks. Phase 2, light training, balance, and stretching, which could take several months. And then phase 3, physical activity, cutting, jumping, shooting the basketball. No timetable for phase number 3. And this week it was reported that Gordon Hayward will rejoin the team, take the lead role on video projects. So it's nice to see Gordon Hayward being around the team, having the opportunity to not be out there on the floor, but to just learn the game of basketball, learn more about playing under Brad Stevens, learn more about playing with the Celtics, taking the lead on these video projects, watching game film and stuff like that. So there's certainly a lot he can do still to improve his game. It's good to see him involved. And I'm sure we'll get all sorts of updates throughout his recovery process, so he'll be around to some degree. But the Celtics granted an $8.4 million disabled player exception. They have until March 10th to use it. They can use it to sign a free agent. They can claim a player who's been cut. They can trade for a player. They can trade for a player with 1 year left on their contract, and the existing bird rights would carry over to the Celtics. And, if you trade for a guy who's in the final year of his contract, you get bird rights. That means you can re-sign him next season and go over the cap. So some trade possibilities. Nerlens Noel. He comes with no bird rights, though, so essentially he's a 1 year rental. Jahlil Okafor, he's fallen out of the rotation altogether in Philly. It's a guy they've been trying to move since last season. He does have a club option for next season. Has to be picked up by Tuesday, though, and if it's not picked up by Tuesday by Philly, this will be the last year of his contract. He's in year number 3 right now, so if he was traded, bird rights would transfer over. Pros with Jahlil Okafor, he's a big or a good post-up big. He's got a lot of moves. Cons, he doesn't have much range, and he doesn't defend very well. So those are two big cons right there. Free agents, Brandon Rush, cut by Milwaukee. He's had a lot of injuries, but he's a career 40% three-point shooter. Mike Dunleavy also could shoot from the outside, but he's 37. Matt Baynes is a capable veteran, a very tough player, also comes with a ton of baggage. Gerald Green is out there, baby. Gerald Green, who, of course, was a spark off the bench for the Celtics, I think, throughout the season, but in particular, the playoffs versus Chicago, when they pulled Amir Johnson from the starting lineup, inserted Gerald Green, and he was a spark offensively, instantly providing the team with some more shooting, providing the team with more ability to stretch the floor. Everybody loves Gerald Green. He's a great locker room guy. He's a cool dude. So who knows? And obviously he already knows the Celtics system. That would seem to make a lot of sense, but it sounds like Danny Ainge is going to be very patient here. We know Danny Ainge likes to practice patience. Everyone over 3 years, fireworks, where's the fireworks? And then Danny Ainge is, consistently disappointing certain fans, not all of us, but disappointing certain fans, and at the same time saying we're waiting for the right move, we're doing what's best for the basketball team, putting ourselves in the best possible position to win now and be good in the future, all of those things. So Danny Ainge will practice patience, and like I said, they have until March to use this exception, March 10th. And towards the end of the season, when teams start, giving up on the season, you see a lot of guys get cut. So maybe they do wait. Maybe they see who they can pick up at that point. So we'll have to wait and see. We love to talk about player acquisitions and roster moves as Celtics fans. So that's something that people will keep an eye on. But again, it might not happen for several months. March is still a long way away. Celtics taking on San Antonio Monday night. Perhaps we see Marcus Morris. Perhaps we don't. Perhaps he returns versus Sacramento. But Celtics back in action Monday night, and they've been a fun team to watch despite not having Gordon Hayward, Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, obviously Kyrie, Al Horford, Aron Baynes. It's fun to watch if you love basketball. So, and then, you're getting some contributions from Daniel Tice. You're getting some contributions from Shane Larkin, Shemi Ojale. Obviously, Marcus Morris can be hot at times, also frustrating, but he can be fantastic. Terry Rozier, typical Terry with the speed and the athleticism and the rebounding and all of those things. So it's been fun to watch. And I'm looking forward to Monday night versus San Antonio. Well, that's it for me. Erik Vandenbossche with the Celtics pod. Take her easy. Go Seas.